All right, welcome everybody. Mike Hamilton here. I'll be the MC for today, the Master of Ceremonies. And we've got a pretty exciting webinar this time. We're actually passing the MadCap microphone, using a metaphor there, over to a guest presenter. Her name is Hennah Rahman. Not only is she the senior technical writer at Bay Area Technical Writing Consulting, but she's actually the owner. So we're getting it right from the top. Now, the subject of today's webinar is using MadCap Flare to publish to Zendesk. And this is one of those subjects we've been getting a lot of requests for. I know it's kind of targeted, it's kind of specific. Either you're working with Zendesk or you're not. But those people that are, this is just like critical information for them. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Hennah. She can go ahead and start sharing her desktop, and then she can do the webinar. Welcome, Hennah. Oh, my apologies, I forgot.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for the introduction.
I'm doing a horrible job as I'm doing a horrible job as MC here. I forgot. I have some housekeeping I'm supposed to cover. Boy, my first live act, and I mess it up. Before anybody asks, yes, the webinar will be recorded. So you don't have to put that in the Q&A window. We will be recording this, and we will be getting this out to everybody. And you can ask questions during the webinar. So there is, if you look at that webinar control panel that is included, there is a little tab that says questions. If you open that tab, there's a dedicated question and answer panel, and I will be monitoring those questions while Hennah gives the presentation, and then we should have a little time at the end for a question and answer session. So my apologies, I forgot to do the housekeeping. Now I will turn it over to Hennah.
No problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Hennah Rahman. I'm a Flare consultant. I'm happy to be here today and to share about how to use MadCap Flare to publish to Zendesk. We'll be discussing content architecture and styling in Zendesk and how it correlates to MadCap Flare. We'll walk through how to create a publishing destination, how to create a target TOC, and how to publish content to Zendesk. We'll also do a quick overview of how to install Zendesk themes and how to customize the Zendesk themes. Finally, we'll go through some best practices and tips for publishing to Zendesk. My goal is that you will leave this webinar with a solid understanding of how to use MadCap Connect for Zendesk to publish your content to Zendesk. Let's get started. First, you will need MadCap Flare 2020 R3. All the information being shared today is based on this version. MadCap Connect is automatically installed when you install MadCap Flare 2020 R3. You previously had to install it as an add-on or through the custom install, but for R3, it's automatically installed for you. Next, you will need your activation key. If you don't have an activation key and you're using MadCap Connect in trial mode, you should be aware that you will be limited to publishing 10 files. If more than one team member is publishing in trial mode to the same Zendesk portal, you'll overwrite each other's content. So that's something to be mindful of. Again, that's only if you're in trial mode. You will also need your Zendesk subdomain if you plan to connect to and your the subdomain you plan to connect to and your login credentials such as username and password with admin rights so that you can publish your content. I would recommend having all this information handy before you get started. Now let's talk a bit about how content is organized in Zendesk. Zendesk content architecture is mapped in Flare using the TOC. You have categories, sections, and subsections, and articles in Zendesk. A Zendesk category, section, and subsection all map to books in Flare. However, subsections are only available if you have Zendesk Enterprise license. So this adds subsections for 3rd through 6th level books in the TOC. If you don't have the Enterprise license installed for Zendesk, then that even if you select the subsection option in Flare, the behavior won't come across in Zendesk. So in this diagram on the right, you see that categories are made up of sections and articles. And then you can see that sections are made up of articles and subsections, again, if you have the enterprise license. You can use this hierarchy here to set up your TOC to determine what it will look like when you publish to Zendesk. So it's really important to take the time early on when you create your TOC to think about how you want that content to appear in Zendesk. So I really urge you to spend the time to kind of set up your TOC and think about how you want your content organized before you just jump in and start publishing content. Zendesk Knowledge Base creates default categories and sections. You can choose to use the default categories or sections, or you can create your own category and sections that align with your TOC and how you want your content organized and published. I think for testing out initially, it's probably okay to use the default categories and sections, but after that, you probably want to set them up correctly so that they are pointing to categories and sections that make sense to your TOC. In the sample project that I created for this demo, I've taken some screenshots here of that. On the left, you see the TOC, and then you see some pictures of the Zendesk portal on the right. So in the TOC, you see that we have 3 categories: a test category, a cars category, which has 3 sections, Japanese, European, and American. And then we have a travel category, which has also 3 sections: beaches, landmark, and amusement park. And you see all these articles right here in your section under beaches. On the top right image is a Zendesk portal when you first publish. You'll notice there are only 2 categories displayed here: test category and travel. Now you may be wondering, why isn't the cars category displayed? This is because if I expanded the cars category in Flare, you would see that there are no articles. And I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. If you would like to force publishing these sections that don't contain articles, you can manually add the category in Zendesk, and then the sections will be published even if there are no articles. In the bottom right, you see the travel category expanded. So you see beaches, landmarks, and amusement parks. And then you see the articles within each of those sections. Notice the beaches section and how the articles are in the same order in Zendesk as they are in Flare. So when you publish, your order of your TOC is maintained in Zendesk. Okay, so let's take a quick look at Flare and kind of see what this looks like there. You can get a better idea. Whoops. Okay, so I have this open to my TOC. First, let's look at the cars category. So if you recall, we mentioned, or that I mentioned that there was no articles in there, which is why it wasn't published. So you see Japanese, European, and American, those sections are there, but there's no articles, which is why we didn't see it initially when we published. Now, if we look at the travel category, you see beaches and you see all the articles, landmarks, all the articles, and amusement parks, all the articles. As you can tell, I focused on travel because let's be real, that's where everyone wants to go right now, is travel. Or at least we're missing it. And then the last one is the test category. So what I did was I just took, when I started this project, I took some of the the default topics that get added as part of the template and just kind of move those around to test publishing. And I use this for moving around topics, adding, deleting, and then just try to see what that would do and what the behavior would be in Flare so I could get a solid understanding of what that publishing behavior looks like. This is something you may want to do as well when you start out to verify publishing and how it works. And then what I did was I added a condition, it's not on right now, called exclude. And then I just put that on this category so that I could exclude it when I was done testing. I'm going to go back. So content and style considerations. So I wanted to spend a few minutes to touch on the importance of doing some initial planning to determine how your Zendesk portals will look like when published. For instance, if you're creating a brand new portal with no existing content, that's almost easier because you don't have to worry about overwriting any content or styles, and you can organize all your content architecture and topics in Flare. Now, if you're adding to an existing portal, you have to be mindful not to overwrite any content, and you need to think about how the new content from Flare will fit into the existing content. You'll need to set up your TOC to match the existing portal in such a way that existing topics are not overwritten or that they don't make sense when they're published. You should consider if the articles existing are in the same format as the existing articles. So, and if they're not, should they be? For instance, in Zendesk, they have article themes. And so the way that they're organized, there's a heading, there's certain things that are a part of the criteria for how an article is set up. So you want to be mindful of that when you're creating your Flare topics. The third option is migrating Zendesk portal content to Flare and then publishing. This is in a situation where there's existing content and you've decided to move it all to Flare. In that scenario, as you review your content, you may realize that you want to reorganize all the existing Flare topics, or Zendesk topics, sorry. In that case, you would want to create the TOC according to how you want the new version of the portal organized, and then migrate the content into the topics to make up this new TOC. So you kind of want to look at the big picture, look at how you want it to be in the end, and then set up your TOC accordingly. Of these three options, I would urge caution if you plan to use option 2, where you'll be publishing into an existing live portal. The chances of overwriting topics and articles is a true possibility. So I would advise that if you plan to do this approach, try to put all your topics published from Flare into new categories or new sections to minimize the possibility of overwriting content. So now that we've talked a little bit about the content itself, I want to touch on how content is styled. In Zendesk, themes are used to control how the articles are displayed. So the Zendesk themes control what master pages, skins, and CSS is controlled in Flare. There are a couple of ways to customize the look in Zendesk. If you want to create the theme in Zendesk and not pull anything from Flare, you can customize one of the existing themes in Zendesk and get it to look exactly how you want. If you want to use some of the CSS styles you created in Flare, as well as some of the cool MadCap features such as dropdowns, you can install that theme that Flare generates when it publishes to Zendesk. You can also choose to customize an existing theme in Zendesk to add some of the CSS from your Flare project. That's the most complex way to customize the theme. I've added links here for quick reference. So if when you get to that point, you can quickly reference these on how to install and modify themes in Zendesk. Now that you know how to set up your TOC and you have a general idea of themes and styles in Zendesk, let's create a publishing destination. So we're going to go to Flare, and you're going to navigate to your project organizer. And then to create a new destination, I already have one, so we'll look at that after, but you right click on destination and then do add new destination. So now you have your destination file. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to stick to this Zendesk example destination 1, and then click add. And then it opens the new destination file for you. Under type, you're going to go down and find MadCap Connect for Zendesk and select that. So then once you select that, there will be an activate button here if this is your first time. Since I have already activated my license, I only see a deactivate button. But if you are activating, then the wizard will walk you through the activation process. And if you can activate either a license in trial mode or a purchase license. Once your license is activated, then you're going to click on the login credentials button. And then you would enter your subdomain here. Once you enter that, you're going to click next, and it'll ask you for your username and password. I'm not going to go through this whole process here, but I'm going to show you mine, which is already set up. So I went through and I added my subdomain and my username and password, and then this is what you see. So now that you're connected, you see your structural options here. So I would select use TOC to define, because you want to set up your TOC in Flare to control your output in Zendesk. You should probably also select categories and sections. So you would select that, and then you have an option here called create subsections. This is a great option if you have level 4 through 6 TOC level books and you want to organize deeper, but it is only available if you have a Zendesk Enterprise license. So if you don't have that license and you go ahead and select it here, it will not add those extra subsections. Then the next thing is, if this is your first time publishing, you'll see the default category and sections in the drop downs here. If you don't want to publish to these and you would like to publish to another default category and section, you can go to Zendesk and manually create a category and section that you would like to set as default. When you click these drop downs, you'll see what the categories are that already exist in Zendesk, and then the sections change based on the categories. So for instance, I have test category selected here, and in that category, there's these 4 sections that are available. So the category you select will then dictate what sections become available to select. So if you had gone back and added those in Zendesk, then you would come back and refresh, reopen this, and then you'll see your new categories and sections. So some things that relate to the default category and section are that topics that are linked to top-level books are published to the default category and section. And then top-level books are published to the default category and section. No additional categories are created for those top-level topics. Topics that are linked to top-level books are published as articles in that section. And then any topics that are not in the TOC, regardless of if they are linked to the topics in the TOC, are all published to the default category and section configured in the destination file. So selecting the checkbox to create subsections allows you to go 3 levels deeper for your articles, but you may or may not need this depending on how deep your content is, and then also if you have the enterprise license or not. So those are just things to keep in mind. I just wanted to list them here as we think about this. And then for your content options, you can set who has visibility to your articles in your published subdomain. And then there's management permissions, which sets the group of users. This is based on what has been set up in Zendesk. So this list may change depending on your environment and how Zendesk was configured. If you're publishing any HTML5 effects, you should select the preserve unsafe HTML. So any of the drop downs, pop-ups, any of that functionality, if this is not enabled, then that content doesn't come through on the Zendesk side. And I've added a quick link on the Zendesk article for what is included or what is considered unsafe HTML in the presentation. So I have it right here. And then publishing articles. So that's the last one here. If this checkbox is not selected, the articles are all published in draft mode. So they won't go live initially. So you may want to do this if you want to review how they look in Zendesk if you're publishing into a live portal. For testing purposes, I usually just kept this on so that I could see what it looks like when live. And then once you select the publish articles checkbox, then these articles, like I said, are published in draft, and then these options become enabled. So use keywords for labels enables using existing index keywords as labels on your published content. Use concepts for labels enables existing concepts as labels on your published content, and then delete stale labels, deletes outdated labels from Zendesk automatically. However, concept and index keywords as labels are not supported in clean XHTML targets. So only HTML5 targets you can use this. The view URL is not used when publishing. So it's really just for you if you want to make a note of what your publishing domain is. You can use it or not use it. It's not used by Flare or Zendesk. It's really up to you. The upload options allow you to set if you want to publish files that have changed and if you want to remove articles that were published but are no longer in the TOC. However, I should note that the publishing process does not automatically remove categories or sections. Those must be manually removed. Next, creating a target to publish to Zendesk. So now that you have your TOC and you have your publishing destination, you want to create your target. So you're going to want to map that destination to your target and then you can publish. So there are two options for publishing to Zendesk: skinless HTML5 and clean XHTML5. HTML5 side nav, top nav, and tri-pane are not supported for Zendesk. But I just wanted to mention that so we're clear. How to create a skinless HTML5 target. Let's start there. I'm going to go back to Flare. I'm going to open up my target. So this is my HTML5 target. And what you're going to want to do is create a new HTML5 target if you have not already created one. You're going to set your output type to HTML5. So you see all the other options. You're going to set your master TOC to the TOC that you created for Zendesk. So in my case, I called it Zendesk TOC. You're going to navigate to the skin tab. Make sure that you have none selected for the skin type. Then you're going to navigate to the publishing tab. And because I created a second one, you see that Zendesk example destination 1 is also available here, but we want to use the one that I initially created. And then you select this checkbox so that that's where you publish. And that's pretty much it. When you select a target type of HTML5, all the source content, including images and multimedia, are published. In addition, any custom scripts and CSS styles you created are also published. You can copy the style sheet that is published to your Zendesk theme manually. We will discuss how to do that shortly. And then the MadCap specific tags and MadCap JavaScript, such as dropdowns and pop-ups, are converted during the build and defined in a generated file called MadCap CSS. And the elements are converted to text. Let me show you where that goes. So this is my output folder. I built and published the HTML5 version. And you see here madcap.html5.theme.zip. So this is the theme file that we're referring to that later when we install the theme in Zendesk, this is the file that we'll be using. So let's go back to Flare for a minute. So I have a topic here that I added a dropdown in. Pretty simple. I didn't really do any customizing. It's pretty basic, but just to show you the behavior. So we have this. If we look here, we're going to preview it in HTML5. Always takes a minute for me. And you see a drop down, right? So expand it, close it back up, and we have that drop down functionality. So now if we go to Zendesk, you see that that same heading is just text. So now if we were to copy the madcap.css file to Zendesk or that entire theme and make that theme live, then we would see this behavior work. I think I have it up here. I had copied it last night. Let's see if I can actually, it's here. Sorry, seems like it's taking a minute here. It may have just locked me out. Okay. So current theme is this Copenhagen theme, but you see the date marked. So last night I had updated this theme. So I'm going to click on customize here so I can just show you. I'm going to scroll through, and if you recall, that topic was in travel, and we're just going to do a few. And this is landmarks topic. So now you see here, the functionality for the dropdown is there because that is the theme that was generated from Flare. It is overwritten the colors with some of these colors, the default colors that are set here. So you can go ahead and customize those. That's where some of these other colors are coming from. But you see that the MadCap styles are coming through now when we select that style. And we'll walk through in a couple of slides how to copy that theme up and how to do that. The last thing I want to note here is that Skins, oops, let me get back here. So Skins search and navigation functionality is not included when you publish to Zendesk. Since Zendesk provides those functions, those features already, those don't get published. So setting up a XHTML target is very similar to an HTML5 target, but you have one extra setting on your target general tab, which is convert style sheet styles to inline styles. Other than that, setting it up is exactly the same. There is no skin because there's no skin with clean XHTML. So let's just go look at that really quickly. So we'll go back to Flare and we'll look at the clean XHTML target. So here in general, you have all these output types. You're going to select clean XHTML. For your TOC, you want to select the Zendesk TOC. So normally for your different targets, it is highly recommended to have a different TOC and destination, because otherwise when you publish, you will overwrite if you're publishing to the same destination. So as a rule of thumb, I recommend having a one-to-one relationship between your target, your TOC, and your destination. So each set would be separate. There's no skin like there is in HTML5, and then the other thing is the publishing. So you set it the same exact way. So pretty straightforward. Now the MadCap specific tabs and MadCap JavaScript are removed for clean XHTML. Although these tags are removed from the output, the generated style classes that start with MC are preserved because they're needed to support these MadCap specific features. Therefore, these style classes are converted during the build and they're defined in the generated madcap.css file. And again, skins, search, and navigation functionality is not included when you publish to Zendesk. Now, how to set up a TOC in Flare for Zendesk. So we went over some of the structural options earlier when we discussed content architecture in Zendesk, but I wanted to restate those here and point out some key points to keep in mind when you are creating your TOC. So top-level books in the TOC are converted to categories and adjacent to existing categories. Topics linked to top-level books are published to the default category and section. Top-level topics are published to the default category and section. Second-level topics are published as sections. And then topics linked to second-level books in the TOC are published as articles in that section. Third-level and lower-level books depend on if the create subsection checkbox is selected. And as I mentioned previously, the subsections are only available if you have the Zendesk Enterprise license. I wanted to restate this here as a quick reference, just because I know as you start creating your content and you start publishing and things may or may not look like what you expect. This is a good cheat sheet, if you will, to be able to reference and see what that behavior is compared to what should be expected. Next, publishing content to Zendesk. So some things to keep in mind when publishing content to Zendesk include selecting the display unsaved content checkbox in Zendesk. So to do this in Zendesk, you have to be in the guide admin and then select settings and then go to the general settings tab and then select display unsaved content under security. This preserves HTML effects you have in your topics. So things like the drop downs, pop-ups, any multimedia, all of that gets included with displaying unsaved content. And I did post a link earlier about what is considered unsaved content in Zendesk, and so you can use that as a reference as well. So in Flare, you need to create a clean XHTML5 or an HTML5 target. You want to make sure to set the skin to none if you selected HTML5, and then select the TOC you created for Zendesk to the master TOC for your target. And then in the publishing tab, select the destination file you created in Zendesk and mark the checkbox under the publish column. And then in the advanced tab for content to include, you want to select content linked directly from the TOC. And that's basically all it takes to publish to Zendesk. So now that you've built and published your Zendesk target, you can install a Zendesk theme. So remember, we looked at that previously. In Windows Explorer, the theme zip file is generated during publishing and placed in the target's output folder. And then in the Zendesk Help Center dashboard, you can navigate to the themes page and add the theme. So let's go back to Zendesk. And we were looking at this particular theme, so we're going to go back. And then this is the main themes page. So this is how you go. You have to be in Guide Admin, go to Themes, and then you can click Add Theme, or I believe you can just explore, you can drag the theme over as well. But you click Add Theme and then select the theme zip file that was here. And then that's it. That adds the project theme to Zendesk. And then what you want to do is, this one's already live, so let me select here. You would just select the theme once it's added and set it as live theme. And that's it. Then that'll replace the current Zendesk theme and it'll be live. Pretty easy. So that's the advantage of using the HTML5 target option, is that you can pull over your theme pretty easily. And then if you want to do any further customization, you can modify that theme directly in Zendesk. But note, if you do make modifications once you've pulled that theme into Zendesk, if you make further changes to your CSS in Flare and then pull that up, it's going to be overwritten. So then at that point, you may want to do the customization of themes. So that's the next slide. Oops, sorry, wrong one. How to customize themes in Zendesk. So if you don't want to replace an existing theme with Flare, with your Flare generated Zendesk theme completely, you can customize the theme with code. You can select the Zendesk theme you want to modify and click customize. So we were just looking at that screen in Zendesk, but it's basically here. Once you select the theme, select customize, and then you're going to click edit code. From your Flare's output folder, you can add the files you want from the assets folder to Zendesk. And then in the template subfolder of your theme in Zendesk, you want to open document head.hbs in a text editor. And if you added or deleted or renamed any of the links listed in the file, you would update those links here. So CSS would be a new link tag, JavaScript would be a new script tag, and then you would save the changes and click publish here. However, I would exercise caution in this scenario. This becomes out of the scope for Flare. And so you're really on your own if you do venture this direction and kind of working with Zendesk on things there, because it's outside of the scope of what Flare handles. But worst case, if you do decide to play around with this, you can just go back to another theme that was working. So there's no permanent harm. Best practices and tips for publishing to Zendesk. So for quick reference, I put together a list of some best practices and tips for publishing to Zendesk. Some of these come directly from the MadCap Flare documentation, and some I learned along the way. I recommend creating a separate TOC to publish to Zendesk. I touched on this briefly earlier. For instance, you may have a print target, but it may not have the same idea of a category section and subsection. So it's best to keep those TOCs separate. By the same token, each TOC and target should have a different destination. Otherwise, the previously published content in Zendesk will be overwritten or duplicated. So that actually happened to me while I was testing. Is I published an HTML5 target with the Zendesk example TOC. And then I published the clean XHTML. And rather than replacing the files because of the way the checksum works, it actually duplicated everything. So just something to be aware of. It is a good idea to have a separate destination for each target. I also recommend creating your own categories and sections. Although Zendesk does create initial categories and sections, it's likely that the naming of those categories and sections do not match what you will need. And then in the destination editor, use the TOC to define the settings should be enabled if the TOC has several nested levels. Otherwise, all the topics from the TOC are published as articles to the default category and section. You should limit publishing multiple targets and destinations to Zendesk in the same batch to avoid any API rate limitations. This isn't an issue unless you're publishing to more than one portal at the same time and have a batch set up, but it's just good to keep that in mind. Also, just remember, Zendesk uses its own search capabilities, so no search data files are published. Also, Zendesk does not support Internet Explorer, and then Flare 2020 R3 is now using Chromium, which is great because we're not using Explorer there anymore either. The MadCap Connect plugin to Zendesk must be activated to the Zendesk destination file before you can publish. So that's important. And if you're using it in trial mode, I would recommend setting up everything before activating because there is a limited window of how long you can use that. So, set up your TOC, set everything up, and then once you feel like, okay, I'm ready to pull the trigger and test this out, then activate your license, your trial license. Topics that are used multiple times in the TOC are only published to Zendesk once. Topics that are linked in the TOC but not explicitly in the TOC are published to the default category and section set in the destination. So, you want to just be careful where those show up and if it makes sense, right? So just things to think about as you're setting up your TOC. Any topics at the third level or lower in the TOC are published as articles in the same level as Zendesk. Categories and sections are added to Zendesk in the same order as the TOC, and we looked at that before. If you move or remove articles in your TOC in Flare after you've published, Zendesk moves or removes the published articles accordingly. So that's great. It takes care of that. However, the empty section is not automatically removed. You'll need to manually remove the section in Zendesk, and the same applies for categories. If you remove a category and section in the Flare TOC and republish to Zendesk, the same thing happens. The category or section is not automatically deleted. You have to manually delete them in Zendesk. You may notice the first time when you publish to Zendesk that there's a lot of duplicate information. Stuff like breadcrumbs, heading are duplicated. If you haven't done any customization, you get a lot of duplicated information. That's because the default master page in Flare has the, I think, the TOC proxy and breadcrumbs, and it has some information there. So what you can do is go to your master page that's being used for Zendesk and remove all those settings. The other thing that you can do to stop the H1 title from being duplicated, because Zendesk automatically adds that, is you can add the styling to your H1. Oops, sorry. You set it to display none and then add a condition. I called it no Zendesk. And then you would just exclude that condition on the Zendesk target. And so then that duplicated title will disappear. And that took me quite some time to figure out. So hopefully that helps you guys. Let's see. Once you get the hang of things, I think you'll be really comfortable. It's actually pretty straightforward to publish to Zendesk. So I think everyone will be really successful at doing this once you kind of go through this and start. Once you get that first publish, then you'll be good. The last thing I just want to say here about this, just to close on this, is you must have the topic title set to the same as the H1 title. Otherwise, the file name is used when you publish, and so you probably don't want that. I hope that this presentation was helpful and makes using the Zendesk Connect plugin feel more doable. It was actually pretty easy to get going once you know what to look out for. Thank you all for joining me today. I'll pass control back to Mike now to close out our session. Thank you.
Boy, it helps if I unmute. I'm sitting here talking to myself. Thank you so much, Hennah. A couple of quick announcements, and then we'll have, and while I'm making my announcements, we can have Hennah look over the Q questions that were submitted, and maybe we can address some of those. But the first announcement, I realize we've had a year of a scary world, but if everything keeps on the current trajectory, we are still hoping to have Mad World, which did get canceled last year, but we're hoping by October things will be back to normal enough that we are planning to hold our Mad World user conference in Austin from October 3rd through October 6th. So if information such as you received in this webinar was interesting, we'll multiply that by 10 or 20 fold, and that's the kind of information you're looking at in a live environment where you can actually interact with the presenters, ask questions. That's what you could expect from Mad World. So that's one thing just to kind of keep on your calendar. That is coming up later in the year. And then the next slide, as a thank you for anybody who has attended, there is a discount available for those who might be upgrading. And in that case, you can actually just speak to your sales representative, let them know that, hey, we attended the webinar. We heard about the discount. I believe it's a $300 discount, but the details will be available from your sales representative. But with all of those announcements out of the way, I'll turn it back to Hennah, see if she has a minute or two to address some of those questions that popped into the Q&A window. Are you comfortable with that, Hennah?
Sure. I'm going to just look at these. So one of the questions that's, I think, pretty straightforward to answer is, so if you have Flare 2020 R3, do you need to purchase anything else other than Zendesk? So I believe there is a subscription to use the Zendesk connector. Do you happen to know the pricing on that, Mike?
Honestly, I don't. I am delinquent. Yikes. That's one of the problems when you have one of the company owners be the MC. I just
no worries.
I'm not that deep in the pricing structure anymore. Tell you what, go on to the next question. I'll see if I can look that up and pop back in again.
Okay, yeah, I do remember that there is a fee. I just don't recall what it is. So we'll get back to you on that one. The next question, if you have Flare 2020 R3, do you need to oh wait, so that was that. Apologize. Oh, someone just responded. Thank you, Dawn. The Zendesk connector is $4.99 per user per year.
So that's not the people viewing the Zendesk content you've published. That's people who need to publish into Zendesk. I can't imagine $4.99 per.
That's your Flare author. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, $4.99 per eyeball that views it. That would be crazy.
Yeah, that's for your Flare author license. So if you have only one person publishing, then you would just need one license there for the connector. Why did you use clean XML instead of HTML5? So actually, I did both just to test out the differences. If it was me in an environment where I'm doing this live and I'm working with it, I would say use HTML5 because it allows you to very easily publish your theme into Zendesk. You also get all the function of the nice features that Flare gives you, right? Your drop downs, pop-ups, all of those things get to come along to your published Zendesk portal, which is really nice. So if I had to pick between the two, I would use HTML5. Cleanup, how much cleanup is typical after the publishing? So that really depends. In terms of content cleanup, it actually comes across pretty clean. What you need to worry about, or I guess what you'd have to customize, is kind of the theme. But it's kind of like a one-time thing. Once you set up all that mapping and you set up what that looks like, then you're good. Then you don't have to do it every time. And then there was a question regarding, do you need a TOC for each category? But then I think you answered that yourself. That's correct. You just need a TOC for your entire portal. Your categories and sections and topics are all within that. Okay, next question. Do you need to reload the MadCap theme in Zendesk? Everything to make a change to your target. I'm not sure I understand. Do you need to reload the MadCap theme in Zendesk? So
I believe what they're asking is if every time you push to Zendesk, do you need to reload the theme?
No. So if you are not making changes, so I think the only time that you would have to do that is if you made CSS changes. So for instance, if you added a new note style, right? Then you need to get that style up to Zendesk so that it can interpret that. So that's when you would need to update that. But the MadCap specific styles, the first time you put that up to Zendesk, those will already be there. So really it's any customizations that you do to your own style sheet. So you'd want to put that back up there. But otherwise, no, it's not a every time type of thing. Let's see. So this question, so how do I know if I have the enterprise version of Flare? Oh, Mike can't answer that. It's a Zendesk thing. So you'd have to go to your, I think your guide admin or something. There's some settings, like a settings in there, and then you can see what you have. Sorry, I'm trying to just shuffle through these. When I'm working in Zendesk, I can't publish an article directly in a category, only in sections. Is this a feature only available in the enterprise edition of Zendesk, or will I be able to do this for more than Flare? We do not have. I can't publish an article to a category. So what I noticed, and I don't recall if you can do it without subsections checked, but if you don't have, if you publish an article that's directly in your TOC that is not in a section, so for instance, in my case, when I had travel, and then I had a topic called travel as well, and then I had my 3 sections, what it did was it published that travel article to my default category. So it will put it, or sorry, into my default category and section. So that's how that works. And so the list that I had put of those things to keep in mind, you can kind of use that as a rule of thumb. It's in the slides for future reference. But that's why I had that testing folder set up, because some of the behavior was weird and I had to kind of go back and forth until you can kind of really wrap your head around it. Because it doesn't always behave how you think it's going to behave, but I think that's more of a Zendesk thing. So, but yeah, that you can, anything that doesn't have a place that's not in a section, I believe it pretty much ends up in your default categories and sections. Let's see, I think there were some more questions that popped up as we were talking.
Actually, that's okay. We're getting pretty close to the hour. Not to worry if we did not get to your question live. Anybody who has participated, once we've wrapped up the recording and we've repackaged it, we are going to do a printed version of all of these questions and answers. And so you will be receiving a link to the recording of this webinar and a link to view the answers to these questions, but in a print format. So if we haven't gotten to your question yet, apologies, time is just starting to get away from us. You can look forward to those answers in the print version. Also, somebody sent me a chat message privately, which you didn't need to do that. It could have been public, but that's okay. They were asking about the links that Hennah shared. Again, not to worry. There will also be a download link for a copy of the slide deck. And that way you'll be able to click those links, right in the slide deck. So lots of resources coming your way. It might take us about 24 hours to get those up and distributed, but that is all coming. And so with that, I think we're going to officially close. And I want to give a special thank you to Hennah. This was a great presentation. I know there's been a lot of questions out there on Zendesk. And I mean, even I've been working with Flare for almost 16 years now, and I'm just picking out little nuggets here and there. So that was awesome. Thank you so much, Hennah. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And have a great rest of today and an even better part of the week. Hopefully see you all at Mad World. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.